All right, so you've probably heard of Robert Kiyosaki, right? The rich dad, poor dad guy. Well, he's sounding a major alarm. He's saying the world is in a full-blown emergency. But he also says there's a way out, a kind of capitalist counterattack. So what in the world is he seeing that maybe the rest of us aren't? Let's dive in and break it all down.
And he is not mincing words here. I mean, for years, he's been the guy warning about a massive crash coming, but now his message is totally shifted. Get this, he's saying the crash we've all been bracing for, it's not coming. It's already here. For him, this isn't some future prediction anymore. Nope, it's our reality right now, today.
He calls this whole situation simply an emergency. And that word emergency, it's everything. It's not just for show. According to Kiyosaki, it's the perfect description for our global economic situation. A crisis, he says, has been brewing for decades.
So the big question is, how did we even get here? Let's look at Kiyosaki's diagnosis. What he believes are the root causes of this whole mess.
Okay, so from his point of view, this all really starts back in 2008. He argues that the big financial crisis, it was never actually fixed. We just papered over it by printing tons of money. And what did that do? It created these massive, massive bubbles. Now, he's worried about stocks and bonds for sure, but his biggest red flag is real estate. He calls it a sinkhole, the kind that could just swallow everything else up with it. And maybe the scariest part? Pensions. He claims both public and private pensions are basically going broke, which puts the future of millions of people in serious jeopardy.
But here's where it gets deeper. For Kiyosaki, this isn't just about dollars and cents. Not at all. He sees it as a huge ideological battle, one with really deep roots. In fact, he traces it all the way back to the Communist Manifesto in 1848. Then, he jumps forward to 1930, claiming that's when Marxist ideas from the Frankfurt School in Germany started to creep into American universities. So by the time he got back from Vietnam in 1972, he felt like he was walking right into the middle of the fallout from that ideological shift.
And that really brings us to the heart of his entire argument. He frames this whole global situation not as just some economic slump, but as a full-on war between two totally opposite ways of seeing the world.
And this is a really key idea to understand his thinking. He doesn't look at capitalism and communism as just, economic systems. No, he calls them economic religions, basically competing belief systems, each with its own set of sacred values and a totally different vision for how the world should work.
So here's how he breaks down the two sides. On one side, you've got communism. He claims this is what's being taught in schools. Its main goal? To get rid of private property in the name of equality, which he sums up with his own acronym, DIE, for diversity, inclusion, and equality. Then, on the other side, you have capitalism. Its goal is way simpler. Create your own private assets and become rich. And for him, that's it. That's the only way to fight back.
There's this quote he brings up all the time, one that's attributed to the old Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. He uses it to make his point that what's happening isn't some random accident. He sees it as a very deliberate, very slow-burn strategy. You just introduce little bits of socialism over time until one day people wake up and the whole system is changed and there was never even a fight.
Okay, so that's the problem, the diagnosis. But Kiyosaki isn't just about doom and gloom. He spends just as much time talking about what he sees as the solution, a full-on capitalist counterattack.
And here's the optimistic twist in all this. He plays on the word itself. He says that hidden inside the word emergency is the word emerge. The idea is that you can come out of this crisis not just surviving, but actually smarter, stronger, and richer. For him, a crisis is just a terrible thing to waste.
So how do you actually do that? How do you emerge? Well, his philosophy is pretty straightforward. Get away from what he calls paper promises. That means stocks, bonds, and fiat currency like the US dollar. Instead, he says you need to be in real hard assets. We're talking about things you can literally touch, gold, silver, but also productive things like oil wells or even breeding cattle. The key difference for him is that you're creating your own assets, not just buying a piece of someone else's company.
And to help people put this all into action, he's got this framework built on what he calls his 4 pillars for emerging from the crisis. It's pretty simple, really. Pillar 1, teachers. You got to be super careful who you're learning from. Pillar 2, skills. You need to get new, practical financial skills. Pillar 3, information. Learning how to tell the difference between real information and what he calls misinformation. And finally, Pillar 4, team. You can't do it alone. You have to build a team.
Let's zero in on that third pillar, information. It really all comes down to this one question he wants you to ask constantly. He says you have to challenge everything you hear. especially from the so-called experts or official sources. Don't just take their word for it. Ask for the proof.
And he actually uses a quote from George Orwell to explain what he means by misinformation. The idea is, when you can't win an argument with the facts, you just change the story. Kiyosaki believes this is a major tactic used to cover up what's really going on with things like inflation or the markets. And for him, just being aware of that tactic is a critical survival skill.
And that fourth pillar, team, really highlights a huge mindset shift he pushes for. Think about it. In school, what are we taught? Work by yourself. Asking for help is cheating. It's all about your individual grade. But in the real world, he says that's the exact opposite of what you need. You have to build a team of accountants and attorneys. Teamwork is everything because out here, nobody cares about your grades. They care about your results.
Which brings us to what might be the climax of his entire message, the single most important tool he says you need to prove you're winning in the real world.
According to him, the most crucial skill you can learn is accounting. It's the language of money. Now, he'll be the first to tell you he thought it was incredibly boring in school, which is why he created his own tool to teach it, the cash flow board game. The whole point was to make learning about money actually fun and hands-on.
And the whole philosophy behind this game is brilliant in its simplicity. First, you get to make all your mistakes with fake money, so you learn the lesson without losing your shirt. It's also based on this principle, what the hand does, the mind remembers. You're physically writing out financial statements, so it sticks. And, he says, it's also a great way to find smart people you might want on your actual financial team someday. This all comes back to a famous line from his rich dad. And it just cuts right to the core of everything. He says his rich dad told him, "My banker has never asked me for my report card." Think about that. In the world of real money, your school grades, your A's and F's, they're completely irrelevant. Because what they do want to see is my financial statement. And that, right there, is the bottom line for Robert Kiyosaki. Your financial statement, that's your income statement, your balance sheet, that is your report card when you grow up. It is the ultimate measure of your real-world financial smarts, because in his world, it's not about what you know in theory, it's all about the results you can produce. So we're left with this one powerful question, the challenge that Kiyosaki puts to everyone listening. He argues that in the middle of this global emergency, getting a handle on your own financial statement isn't just a nice to have. It's the only way you're going to emerge from this thing successfully. So the only real question left is, what does your adult report card say about you?